I'm Anna, 29 years old. And until recently I believed I had carefully designed my life to be predictable, steady, and secure. I'm an architect by profession, and I tend to approach my personal life the same way I approach my buildings. With structure, with intention, and with plans that account for every bolt and foundation stone. But no amount of planning prepares you for the moment you discover your parents have forged your signature and taken out a staggering $450,000 loan in your name. Even saying it feels unreal, like it belongs to someone else's life. But it's mine. And it didn't strike like lightning. It crept in like a silent mold growing behind a pristine wall. I live 2 hours from my childhood home, in a quiet suburb with my husband, Tom. He's a high school history teacher with a calm steadiness that balances my deadlines and blueprints personality. We're planners, the kind who actually read the fine print, calculate the interest, and know exactly what's in our emergency fund. My family, on the other hand, lives in a world powered by impulse and excuses. And most of those impulses orbit around one person, my younger brother, Chris. He's 26. But his life experience resembles that of a teenager who keeps waiting for the world to recognize his hidden genius. My parents, Robert and Mary, call him gifted. I call him accountability averse. This imbalance between responsibility and favoritism didn't appear out of nowhere. It was the foundation of my upbringing. I remember being 18 and proudly driving home the beat-up sedan I had bought with 2 years of weekend shifts at a diner. I needed it for my internship at a small architecture firm. My dad had patted my back and proudly said, "That's my girl, earning her own way." 3 years later, Chris received a brand new SUV with a red bow so large it probably had its own price tag. He had no job, hadn't finished art school, and contributed absolutely nothing to justify the expense. When I asked why he deserved something brand new, my mom just sighed with that dreamy tone she saved only for him. "He needs something reliable to show his portfolio around, honey. It's an investment in his future." Apparently, my future didn't require investing. That pattern repeated itself endlessly. When college rolled around, I was encouraged, lovingly of course, to attend a practical, affordable state university. "You'll shine anywhere," Dad had said. And I did. I worked hard, graduated with honors, and carried minimal debt. Then it was Chris's turn. He wanted to study at an expensive private art school. And suddenly no price was too high for his dream. Another loan. Another refinance. Another sacrifice. All for him. And somehow I was expected to clap. One of the clearest memories of this imbalance happened during a family vacation we tried to take a few years ago. I had planned a quiet week at a lakeside cabin. Hiking, cooking together, reconnecting. By the second day, Chris was bored. And after discovering a music festival several states away, he declared that we had to go. Within hours, our peaceful vacation was disassembled like a tent collapsing in the wind. We repacked, crammed into the car, and drove 10 hours so Chris could stand in a muddy field listening to bands he forgot about a week later. My comfort was always optional. His desires were non-negotiable. So when I sat across from my family at a Sunday dinner in their picture-perfect dining room, basking in the scent of roasted vegetables and my mother's overly sweet perfume, I should have known. The atmosphere had that familiar edge. The one that usually meant another chapter of Chris's life was about to be funded. But I never expected the scale of what was coming. Because that Sunday dinner didn't just reveal favoritism, it unveiled a betrayal so staggering it would split my life cleanly into before and after. The Sunday dinner began with all the familiar choreography I'd grown up with. My mom bustling between the kitchen and dining room, my father holding court at the head of the table, and Chris scrolling on his phone like a modern-day prince waiting to be entertained. Tom and I arrived with a bottle of wine. And Mom greeted us with a bright smile so polished it could have cracked. Everything felt normal, which in my family meant pleasant on the surface, explosive underneath. We made small talk, the kind that fills space without meaning anything. My dad complained about grocery prices, my mom recapped her book club drama, and Chris muttered distracted responses, far more invested in whatever was on his screen than the people sitting beside him. I played my usual role. The polite, attentive daughter who kept conversations flowing smoothly. Tom, ever patient, joined in with gentle humor. Then, just as the plates settled and the first bites were taken, my father set his utensils down with a deliberate clatter. The entire table froze around the noise. He looked like a king about to proclaim a royal decree. "Your mother and I have some wonderful news," he announced, puffing out his chest like he'd been waiting all evening to deliver the line. Mom clasped her hands together, smiling so wide it looked painful. Chris finally put down his phone, his sudden interest confirming what I already suspected. Whatever this was, it involved him. Dad took a deep breath, savoring the moment. We've decided it's time for Chris to have the space he needs to truly grow. Somewhere creative. Somewhere inspiring. He paused dramatically. We bought him a house. My fork slipped from my hand. House. Not a rented studio, not a shared apartment. A house. My parents, both retired, living on fixed incomes, buying a house for a man-child who couldn't commit to finishing an online course, let alone hold a steady job. Chris grinned, leaning back like the universe had finally recognized his brilliance. 5 bedrooms, he said smugly. Huge yard. Tons of natural light. Perfect for an art studio. The room swayed. Oakwood Hills. The most expensive neighborhood within an hour's drive. My parents couldn't afford a backyard shed there, much less a full home. Something didn't add up. How? I asked, my voice carefully neutral. Did you afford that? Dad waved a hand dismissively, the way he used to brush off my childhood questions. Well, we had some help. The bank was very cooperative. I felt a cold prickling at the back of my neck. Mom took over, smoothing her napkin like she was narrating a recipe. The loan was approved last week. Everything's taken care of. Loan. That word sat on the table like a live grenade. What bank? Yes. First National Trust, Dad replied proudly. The same bank where I kept every one of my accounts. They gave us an incredible rate. And then he said the sentence that changed everything. The drive home after that disastrous dinner was suffocatingly quiet. Not cold or angry, just heavy. Like the car was filled with something thick and unbreathable. Streetlights streaked across the windshield, flashing over my reflection again and again, each time showing a face that looked just a little more hollow. Tom kept glancing at me, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. He didn't push. He never pushed. But after 20 minutes, he finally pulled the car over beneath a flickering street lamp and turned off the engine. Anna, he said softly, you've barely blinked since we left. Talk to me. The moment the words hit the air, something inside me cracked open. They took my name, Tom, I whispered, my voice shaking. Just took it. Like a tool off a shelf. Like it belonged to them. And then everything poured out. Not just tonight's betrayal, but the entire history of being second place in my own family. The state school practicality. The hand-me-down expectations. The SUV gifted to my brother while I drove a car I'd bought with diner tips. The ruined vacation. The endless excuses made for him in a household where I had only ever been asked to be responsible. Tears slid down my cheeks, and I didn't even bother wiping them away. Tom didn't argue, didn't try to soften anything. He simply said, what they did wasn't help. It was fraud. And it has consequences. The word fraud felt sickeningly real, heavier than anything I'd let myself acknowledge before. But I wasn't ready to believe it fully until we got home. Inside our living room, the space we'd built together, painted together, planned together, everything felt wrong, violated. Like my family had reached into this safe space and smeared it with their entitlement. Let's confirm it first, Tom said gently. Before we go down the legal road. We need proof. A small part of me whispered desperately that maybe my parents exaggerated or misunderstood or something. Anything. Any explanation except the one that was now sinking into my bones. I sat down with my laptop, hands trembling as I logged into the bank portal. My breath hitched. There it was. Under loans, beneath my own modest mortgage, sat a new line. Personal line of credit. Account holder, Anna M. Balance, $450,000. Status, approved. Funds disbursed. Funds disbursed. The money wasn't theoretical. It was gone. Taken. Handed over. My stomach twisted so violently I had to grip the edge of the table to keep from collapsing. It's real, I choked. Tom, it's real. He knelt in front of me, his voice calm but firm, the voice he used when guiding panicked students through overwhelming moments. Then we fight it. How? The single word burst out of me, equal parts fear and fury. They're my parents. What does fighting even look like? Tom looked at me deadened. Anna. This isn't about disappointing your parents. This is about protecting our lives. This loan will destroy everything we've built and everything you've worked for. We will not carry this. His certainty was like oxygen. Something hardened in me then. Not bitterness, not rage. Resolve. Quiet, powerful, and long overdue. I walked into our small home office and found the business card my friend had given me months ago. A lawyer she trusted. A lawyer, she said, saved her life. My hands shook as I dialed. When the voicemail beeped, I steadied my voice. Hello. My name is Anna. I need an urgent consultation. I believe I'm the victim of identity theft, and the people responsible are my parents. When I hung up, a cold, clear shift settled inside me. I was done being the obedient daughter who absorbed the consequences. I was done being the one who held the family together while they pulled me apart. Because when the lawyer looked me in the eyes the next morning, she didn't tell me I was overreacting. She told me I was the victim of multiple felonies. Catherine Davis's office sat high above the city, a space of cool glass, clean lines, and quiet authority. The kind of place where emotions didn't stand a chance against facts. As Tom and I stepped inside, a strange sense of calm washed over me. Maybe it was the orderliness. Maybe it was the feeling of finally doing something instead of drowning in fear. Catherine stood as we approached. She was sharp-eyed, composed, and carried herself with a kind of confidence that suggested she'd seen far uglier cases than mine. Anna, please come in. We sat across from her at a large mahogany desk. For the first time since the nightmare began, I felt like someone was on my side. Not out of obligation, not out of guilt, but out of professional duty. Tell me everything, she said. So I did. I walked her through the favoritism, the Sunday dinner, the casual announcement of the house, the loan, the forgery. I slid the printed bank screenshot across the desk. Catherine listened with laser focus, her expression unreadable. When I finished, the room fell silent. Finally, she leaned back and folded her hands. Anna, she said carefully, I want to be absolutely clear so there is no confusion about the gravity of this situation. She tapped the printout with her nail. What your parents did is not a misunderstanding. It is not a family squabble. It is a series of felonies. The words felt like cold metal. She continued, her tone steady and factual. Using your identity without consent to secure a $450,000 loan constitutes identity theft, forgery, and bank fraud. Each of these carries severe legal consequences. Tom's hand found mine, grounding me. I swallowed hard. What are my options? Catherine lifted 2 fingers. 2 paths. Path 1, you do nothing. You implicitly accept responsibility for the loan. The bank will expect full repayment. If you default, they will come after your assets, your wages, your home, everything. You and your husband will spend decades repaying a debt you never agreed to. The image of Tom and me drowning in someone else's choices made my stomach twist. She lifted her 2nd finger. Path 2, you fight. That begins with filing a police report and signing a sworn affidavit stating you did not authorize this loan. The bank launches an internal investigation. If they determine the documents were forged, and based on this, she tapped the printout. They will. The loan is removed from your responsibility entirely. Relief flickered through me. Until I asked the question sitting like a stone in my throat. And my parents? Catherine didn't soften her voice. She respected me too much for that. The police investigate. The district attorney decides whether to press charges. Given the amount involved, it is extremely likely charges will be filed. They could face arrest, probation, fines, potentially jail time. The room seemed to tilt. I imagined my father in handcuffs. My mother crying as she was fingerprinted. My brother raging over losing his mansion. Images that felt like they belonged in a nightmare, not my life. But my voice cracked. I don't want to destroy them. Catherine's expression held sympathy, but not pity. They destroyed the boundaries that protected you. You're not choosing to punish them. You're choosing to protect yourself. They created this situation. You are responding to it. Her words pierced deeper than she knew. She slid a folder toward me. Papers outlining the next steps. When you're ready, she said gently. We proceed. As we left the office, I felt the weight of an impossible choice pressing down on my shoulders. But beneath that weight, buried like an ember under ash, something stubborn began to glow. The knowledge that if I didn't fight now, I might never get my life back. Because before I could walk into a police station, I had to do something even harder. Look my parents in the eye and give them one last chance to make it right. Before I could walk into a police station and sign the papers that would formally accuse my own parents of multiple felonies, I knew I had to face them. Not for their sake, but for mine. I needed to look them in the eyes and see, one last time, whether they understood the magnitude of what they had done. Whether there was even a shred of remorse beneath the entitlement. The 2-hour drive to their house felt endless. Tom insisted on coming with me, staying silent beside me but radiating the kind of steady presence that kept me from falling apart. My mind replayed Catherine's words over and over. They created this situation. You're just responding to it. When we pulled into my parents' driveway, I noticed Chris's shiny SUV parked crookedly beside my father's sedan, as if even his parking habits were carried by privilege. My mother opened the door before I reached it. Her face was bright with expectation, like she believed I'd come back to apologize. Anna, sweetheart, we were about to celebrate again. Come in. Celebrate. The words scraped across my nerves. Inside, the living room looked staged, as if they'd been preparing for a party rather than a confrontation. A champagne bottle sat on the coffee table. Chris lounged on the couch with the smug confidence of someone who thought the world owed him everything. Dad stood near the fireplace, chest puffed, the picture of self-righteous authority. We were wondering when you'd stop overthinking and come to your senses, he said, as if the $450,000 loan they'd taken in my name was a minor inconvenience. I didn't sit. I didn't smile. I simply said, I'm here to talk about the loan. My mother's smile faltered. My father's expression tightened. Chris straightened slightly, sensing tension like a spoiled cat sensing someone's about to say, no. The loan is taken care of, Dad said dismissively. The paperwork's done. You don't need to stress yourself about it. My laugh came out sharp. You forged my signature. You stole my identity. That's not paperwork, Dad. That's a crime. My mom gasped dramatically, pressing a hand to her chest. Anna, how can you say that? We're your parents. We did this out of love. For the family. For Chris, I corrected. Silence fell. Then Chris spoke, voice thick with offended entitlement. You always make everything difficult, Anna. This house is a huge opportunity for me. You should be proud to help. I turned on him with a level of clarity I hadn't felt in years. You are 26 years old, Chris. You don't get handed a $500,000 house because you want one. That's not opportunity, that's delusion. Dad stepped forward, face flushed with anger. I won't let you disrespect your brother in this house. This isn't about disrespect, I said. It's about accountability. And what you did is illegal. My mother began crying. Her go-to tactic whenever she wanted sympathy. After everything we've done for you. Your wedding, your college, the money we've given. That money was a gift, I snapped. And you don't get to reclaim a gift by committing a felony. Dad jabbed a finger toward me. We are your parents. You owe us. There it was. The truth behind everything. Not love. Not gratitude. Ownership. I took a slow breath and spoke with a calmness that surprised even me. I met with a lawyer, I said. And I came here to give you a choice. You can go to the bank and confess. Cancel the loan. Admit the fraud. If you do that immediately, I won't file a police report. Their faces changed instantly. Fear for a split second, then denial, then anger. You wouldn't dare, Dad hissed. You think you're going to ruin your own family. Mom cried. Chris glared at me with pure hatred. You're unbelievable. You're actually ruining my future over money. I looked at each of them, really looked, and saw nothing but entitlement and outrage. Not remorse. Not accountability. Not even understanding. Just anger that their plan wasn't working. I'm done, I said quietly. I walked to the door. Tom followed. My father shouted behind me. If you walk out that door, you are no longer our daughter. I didn't even turn around. Because the truth was painfully clear. They weren't the parents I had loved. They were the people who chose greed over me. Because the next place I walked into wasn't their home. It was the police station, where I signed the report that would change all of our lives forever. Walking out of my parents' house felt like stepping out of a room filled with smoke. The air outside was cool and sharp, cleansing in a way I desperately needed. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I didn't collapse into Tom's arms. Something inside me had shifted permanently. The kind of shift that doesn't make noise but rearranges everything. The next stop wasn't home. It was the police station. The building was stark and utilitarian, with fluorescent lights buzzing faintly above the reception desk. A uniformed officer looked up as we approached. "How can I help you?" I swallowed hard. "I need to report identity theft and loan fraud." He didn't flinch. Didn't even blink. He just pointed to a row of chairs. "Have a seat. A detective will be with you." Tom sat beside me, silently holding my hand. The radio crackled nearby. Phones rang. Officers passed by with files and tired expressions. And in the middle of all that noise, I realized something. This wasn't shameful. This wasn't betrayal. This was self-preservation. A detective finally called my name. "Anna. Right this way." Detective Miller was a man who looked like he'd seen every kind of mess people could create. His office was cluttered but warm, filled with the scent of old paper and cheap coffee. He gestured for us to sit. "Tell me what happened." For the third time in as many days, I recounted the timeline. But this time it came out cleaner, sharper, more factual. I had practiced saying it out loud, not as a daughter but as a witness. When I handed him the printed loan screenshot, he raised an eyebrow. $450,000. He let out a low whistle. "And you're certain you didn't authorize this?" "Positive," I said. He typed quickly, occasionally pausing for clarification. After nearly an hour, he printed out a multi-page statement and slid it toward me. "Read this carefully. If it's accurate, sign the bottom. Once you do, this becomes an official investigation." My hands were steady as I began reading. Every sentence was precise, clear, irrefutable. My parents' names looked foreign on paper, not Mom and Dad, but Robert and Mary. By the time I reached the last page, my chest felt heavy but certain. "Sign." Detective Miller collected the papers and nodded. "We'll take it from here. You'll hear from the DA's office soon." Walking out of the station felt like crossing a threshold. What lay behind me was a family built on denial and favoritism. What lay ahead was uncertain, painful, but mine. The fallout began almost immediately. By the time Tom and I reached home, my phone was flooded with missed calls and frantic messages. From Mom, "The bank froze the funds." "Anna, how could you do this?" From Dad, "You've made a massive mistake. You think they'll protect you. You're destroying our family." From Chris, "You ruined my future. Hope you're proud." I blocked them all. The days that followed were a blur of bank communications and legal confirmations. The forgery was obvious. The signatures were sloppy imitations. I was cleared of all responsibility by the end of the month. My parents were not. The bank pursued charges. The DA followed. Catherine updated me regularly. "There's more than enough evidence," she said. "They won't escape consequences." 6 months later, I sat at the back of a courtroom as my parents accepted a plea deal. No jail time but heavy fines, restitution, probation, and a felony record they could never outrun. Chris stared at me with venom from the row behind them. My mother avoided my eyes completely. My father looked smaller than I'd ever seen him. But I didn't feel victorious. Felt free. In the year since, Tom and I have rebuilt our lives intentionally, piece by piece. I started therapy. I learned to understand the difference between loyalty and self-sacrifice. I learned that boundaries don't make you cruel. They keep you alive. Sometimes I think about the family I used to believe I had. The one I used to defend. The one I prayed would someday treat me as more than a resource. But then I remember the moment they forged my name. And I know the truth. I didn't break the family. They broke the daughter they thought would never fight back. And they were wrong.